say is that we are all in a most secure jail, guarded by a most cunning and youthful jailer. I want to suggest that we are born, each of us, with infinite possibility. That is, if we hit the jackpot of being born into a family with enough to eat. We're all born with infinite possibility. And who can deal with that? It's too much weight. It's miserable. Who can stand all that choice? You can't be at every moment as infinite and as various as you really are. You need to narrow that nonsense down. I'm not sure why, but we all do, so we all must need to. And I think that in order to narrow it down, we start to develop an identity or a character, some kind of idea of who we are. And we usually do that when we're in adolescence. Actually, I was being a bit disingenuous before when I said that I didn't know why we needed to narrow ourselves down. I don't know, but I do have a good idea, which embarrassingly I take from a popular non-fiction book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, by the neurologist Oliver Sacks. In it, he talks about a man who had lost his memory, and yet could be quite happy when left by himself in the garden. It was only when he met people that he became agitated and felt a need to talk, telling them that he was a butcher who lived in Lyon, or a printer who lived in Marseille. So I want to suggest that this need we have to define ourselves only exists in relationship to other people. Human beings need shortcuts, and we cannot expect everyone, the general public, to accept our vastness. They need a shortcut. You are the bossy one, or the sporty one, or the liberal one, or the racist one. And once you have given other people that definition of yourself, you find that you begin to grow to fit neatly into it. Now, I personally very much defined myself as the artsy one. If there are inherent tendencies, which I doubt, especially around gender, but that's another TED talk for another day, then maybe I was inherently artsy. So when I was in junior school, apparently I said I wanted to go to speech and drama classes, and my mum said, "Oh, that's nice, who else is going?" And I said, "No one, I'm going by myself." So I spent a lot of time in the theatre when I was a child and later as a teenager. And by the time I went to university, everybody had a very neat little box to fit me in, which I found most comfortable and capacious. And I was able to use that box to float in total safety over the tough river of choices that everyone else has to make in their early 20s. What course shall I do? What building shall I live in? What shall I do with my life? Easy. Theatre, theatre, theatre. So I moved to the UK and I worked in the theatre. It's a brutally competitive profession, the theatre, and only a very narrow definition of who you are and what your life means keeps you in it. I was fortunate to be successful, working in the West End, at Shakespeare's Globe, and on large-scale UK and US tours. When you've aimed for something for a long time and you finally achieve it, or achieve part of it, you're obviously going to be happy, right? So self-evident is the fact that the achievement of a long-term goal will make you happy, that it took me at least a couple of years to notice that I was not, in fact, happy. I just kept ignoring it, as you might ignore a creepy man on the tube. It didn't have any place in my worldview. It didn't fit into my box. Now, every speech is improved by a good quote, so get ready, here comes one. It's from In Search of Lost Time by Marcel Proust. But certain favourite roles are played by us so often before the public and rehearsed so carefully when we are alone that we find it easier to refer to their fictitious testimony than to that of a reality which we have almost entirely forgotten. Just as you can no longer ignore the creepy man once he opens his raincoat, I eventually had to cease referring to that fictitious testimony and accept that after all, I was not happy. I was, in fact, unhappy. And in the end, I realized it was not the unhappy that had to be changed, but the I. I started off by looking in areas very similar to the theatre, like teaching. Anything but come out of the box. But curiously, I found that just as defining myself for other people had helped me into the box, so asking other people for new definitions helped me out of the box. So I asked anyone and anybody that I met for ideas about future careers. Any suggestion from any random acquaintance, I tried it, I researched it. Therapy, law, retail, MI5. Don't worry, I looked into it. And actually, you know, the MI5 website is very interesting. The Q&A section, Q, can I tell people I'm applying to MI5? A, no. We will provide you with a cover story. So this is not the Sarah Norman career history, so let's not go into it all in too much painful detail. But I can tell you that I am finding it fairly easy to move. In fact, ridiculously easy. The main thing, it turns out, was simply to realize that I do not have to be who my 16-year-old self thought I was. I don't have to be who my family or my friends think I am. I do not have to be who I thought that I was. Now, this is not a talk about my wonderful success. Fear not, I am still a mess. I am like a squidgy little clam that's looking for a new safe shell. But I am a wiser clam than I was before. I know that whatever shell I find, I am still inherently a squidgy little clam, whereas before, I thought I was my shell. And I wish I had not wasted so much time feeling like I had to be who I had defined myself to be. I wish I had spent more time mumbling happily to myself in the garden, rather than being a butcher from Lyon or a printer from Marseille. And now perhaps this is a very normal life stage for anyone in their 30s, and perhaps older people in the audience will laugh into their white beards, thinking, wait till you hit your 50s. Then you will find that all your squidgy little clam wants is not a career, but a cocktail waitress. But I think that we who are in our 30s understand each other. And I feel there is one special 30-something whose identity crisis I understand. A 30-something with a pretty serious identity crisis, the country of Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe and I were born at about the same time, and I found recently a social studies exercise book from grade 3, where I had cut out pictures from the paper in which our country's proud Marxism was being celebrated at a large event at the National Stadium. There was my big uneven handwriting. There were the pictures of this big Marxist event. Youth. Before Zimbabwe and I knew who we were, both me and my country had good childhoods with good education and good health. But both of us, in our late 20s, started to fall apart. I never got quite as poor as my country, but we both realized that our old modes of being, of understanding who we were no longer working. We all, I'm sure, as Zimbabweans, mourn the country we had. From small things like fatso ice creams, to medium-sized things like a quality ZBC. To big things, like, say, for example, an economy. I often still feel sad when I think of all the institutions that are gone and that realistically we will never have again. All the people we loved and will never have again. Every community in our country has lost people, no matter what income level or ethnicity, to displacement, to poverty, to death, to that brazen hussy, the diaspora. We are in many ways a people without a past. We are a people without a past, and that's a way of saying we are free. And I want to suggest that while we can mourn what we had, we also have now a chance that few countries get to be something really new. We have a chance to be a new country with a new idea of ourselves. We are all squidgy little clams looking for a shell. And while the water is cold and salty, and obviously we are scared of getting eaten by fish or by crabs or by whatever it is that eats clams, we are also free. We are free clams. We are a free country. Our past is dying, and we have a chance to be a new Zimbabwe. It's not every generation that gets to be present at the birth of a new country. The Americans in 1776, the French in 1879, the Zimbabweans in 1980, and now I say, the Zimbabweans in 2011. We've managed it twice in 2 generations. We get to start again. And I can tell you, getting to the point where you need to start again is painful. But starting again is great.